Hello, everybody. I am extremely embarrassed because after I scheduled this for 1 o'clock, somehow I transposed it in my head to 2 o'clock. And here I am waiting to start. And I look and I'm thinking, you know what? I better check. And sure enough, I'm a half hour late. So I apologize to you guys. I'm extremely embarrassed about that. Um,
Um,
oh,
uh,
all right. So we do have a question from Anthony. He says, in case he can't be here, hi Eddie, you make your music play along is great. You mentioned using it for practicing sight reading this past Saturday. I started using it as a part of my practice. Thank you. Just in case I don't make it to this Q and A. Oh, he's just saying thank you. Okay, I thought there was a question here. We did have another question that didn't make it anywhere here. I think I saw it at the end of one of the other ones when I was talking about the mouthpieces. And just to recap that, I am now, uh, I've got one of those Warburton mouthpiece kits, and I was letting you guys know that I can at this point do proper fittings, which is actually a very important thing when it comes to the equipment. Most of us don't ever get that. Even if we have access to a lot of mouthpieces, we don't ever get that. I know that for me, um, see, I never had access to this kit until last week. It came in Thursday night. And when we had the last Q and A, I hadn't been able to do anything with it yet. But I have since then started my own fitting. And the more I mess with this fitting stuff, now don't get me wrong, I've done fittings before, but I've been limited. I point over there because that's where my mouthpieces are. That's where all my equipment stuff is, except for the horns. The horns are over here. Um, I've always been limited to whatever mouthpieces I have in my box, and those, how many of those comes and goes because, like sometimes I'll have a rare mouthpiece that a student really needs, and I'll let them buy the mouthpiece from me. Sometimes, they don't buy it, and it just never comes back again. That's one sad reality of being a teacher. Um, So anyway, yes, uh, I was talking about that last week, and one of my students, I think it was Sean, who asked, "Is it possible to, or how easy is it to um, carry those sizes once you get fitted? How easy is it to carry those sizes over to another maker, another brand?" And in theory, we know what the measurements are. So I have two answers for that. We know what the measurements are, so you can look at it and you can say, yes, um, this mouthpiece with this brand is similar to this. The problem with that is when you have a system like uh, 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 Warburton, I almost forgot the name. When you have a system like Warburton where every tiny variable from like the 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 shanks are, I think there's 15 different sizes, something like that. I have to read up on it more so I know what I'm talking about when I talk about this stuff. And then there's the star version of that, so there's 30 of those. And then they have their other custom ones that have the letters on them instead of the numbers. And when you have, and it's the same thing with the cup sizes, the cup depths, and all that stuff. When you have so many variables like that, and you find a combination of the cup and the backboard that fits, that works together for you, Yes, we can take those sizes and say, okay, that's similar to a Buck this or a Giardinelli that or this or that. Um, Good luck finding that. The whole point of this kit is to have those increments and the ability to swap them. If you do the math on this, let me pull out my handy dandy phone calculator. Oh, this doesn't do. Maybe it does. Hold it this way. Oh, it's not doing that. I need one that has more modern functions. Um, uh, so we're looking at the number of just in that one kit alone, just in the mouthpiece kit alone, you're looking at literally thousands of different mouthpiece combinations. The chance of you finding that exact combination with another maker is not likely. I hope that makes sense. I'm not saying I've never been one of those people who says one brand is not better than another brand. I am not like that. I don't believe that. Okay? I don't believe that. Have never believed that. Probably thanks to my father. Right? My father basically told me that when I was growing up that brand was basically a matter of luck. He was talking what he always used as an example for that was uh, washers and dryers and um, and tires. He always used as an example washers and dryers and tires. And he says he has never had good luck with that brand, so he doesn't buy that brand. But he acknowledges is that brand is just as good as any other brand, and we can apply that to the mouthpieces too, right? There's so the issue with going with another brand when you use this brand to find if you used Warburton to find exactly the fit for you, the chances are you won't find that fit. Now, does that mean you won't find a better mouthpiece someplace else? I can't tell you that. But the other manufacturers don't have this system. Not to my knowledge. I might be wrong about that. But the other manufacturers don't have this system where you can go through and systematically try thousands of different now not you won't really try thousands. You have to do a process of elimination. I hope that makes sense. You don't actually try every combination. There won't be enough time for that. But when you do find a combination that works for you, generally speaking, it's not you won't find that same mouthpiece with another maker. You might find something close. Now, is it possible that if you're not a advanced student that you might not be able to tell the difference? Yes, that's possible. I think the equipment matters more for more advanced players. I just realized I'm wearing my cloudy glasses. I wear these cloudy ones so I don't have to ruin the new ones. All right. So, do we have any questions today besides that? The answer to that question, the short answer is yes, we can tell you what size it is when you get fitted. But good luck finding that with another company. So I don't think I think it's a waste of time and effort to go through the process of using that kit to find your size if your intention is to not use that mouthpiece because you won't get that same exact size with another company. Okay. So in that sense, it's a very practical thing. It's not emotional. It's a very practical thing. And once you bring emotion into it, that's an entirely different thing. Okay. All right. So, hello, Karen. Nice to see you. Karen asks, "Is there a better mouthpiece for a struggling comeback player? I have Bach 3C, 7C, and 10.5C." Um, you know, to me, which one of those you use should have nothing to do with how much you're struggling. They're all three C cups, and because they're all three C cups, uh, it's the cup that. So let me back up a little bit. It's the cup that might make it a little bit less of a struggle. No, I shared with you just now that um I only so over the last couple days, 3 days, over the last 3 days, I've been systematically going through different combinations in the kit. And when I first started doing this, I did not read what the numbers represented. I specifically kept myself dumb to that, ignorant on purpose, because I didn't want my knowledge to influence how I perceived the performance of each mouthpiece. Now, let me let me clarify there that the diameter, I only use one size. I found my diameter in the 80s. I've only been playing on that diameter ever since then. So that takes one variable out. So so I only use the twos. So I'm going through the twos and I'm using these different backbores, and I find that I'm gravitating. I have backbores from, I think, 5 to 10. Let me get the case. Yes, I've got backbores from 5 to 10. And like I said, I kept myself ignorant on what those numbers meant. So I found myself gravitating towards the 10, even for the high stuff. In fact, it was working so well on the notes above high C that I thought for sure, using my what I know about mouthpieces, I thought for sure that 10 was a tighter backbore and 5 was a more open backbore, because I was getting a very clear centered sound on the notes above high C with that 10. Then I looked online to see what those numbers are, and it's actually the opposite way around. It's a more open backbore. And in other words, bigger backbore, however you want to put, I don't think those words really work that way. But for me in the upper register, it seems like I'm going to do some more testing, but it seems like for me, the bigger backbore works better than the smaller backbore. And that might be, here's another thing to take into account, is what works on one trumpet may not work on another trumpet. You might need a different backbore and cup for a different trumpet. And I plan on going through this series a little bit every day. This not series, this sequence. And when I figure out what works perfect for me on the the Bach B flat, I'm going to go to the Holton. I have a Holton. Actually, it's not mine; it's my son's. But I want to match mouthpieces to that because it's a lead trumpet, and I want to match and see what works best with that, and see if I can't make that horn play better for me. And then I'll do the pudgy, Same thing on the pudgy. That said, the pudgy, I really like the mouthpiece I've been using on that, but I might, I wouldn't mind just for the to be comprehensive. I wouldn't mind going through that whole system again with the pudgy. Now, why am I telling you all that? Because what's supposed to be true about mouthpieces is not always true. What's supposed to be true for um uh just look using this as an example. It's supposed to be that the tighter backbore is better for the upper register. And that ended up being the opposite for me. Now I'm zeroing in on what's best for me. I expect this to be, I couldn't do, I can't, for people that come over for fittings, I wouldn't be able to do with them what I'm doing for myself. But the learning process I'm going through by doing this is going to help me do it more quickly with people when they come over for a fitting. Okay, so so yes, I think it's now taking this and applying it to what you're asking, Karen. In theory, the smaller mouthpiece, the 10.5C, should be better for a struggling comeback, but we don't really know that. That's not etched in stone. The sometimes, let me share with you another example from my past. I've always struggled on, high school, junior high, high school, into college. Every horn I played on was a struggle. Every trumpet I played on, it was a struggle. And then the first time I played on a Bach large bore trumpet. You know what? When the guy gave me the trumpet, he was my teacher at the time. When he gave me the trumpet to try, he said, it's going to take you some time to get used to it. You're going to have fatigue issues. You're going to have reduced range. And this makes sense because a bigger bore is less resistance. So it makes sense that you're going to have more problems playing high and with endurance. But with me, that wasn't true. With me, it was like the clouds had cleared, the burden had been lifted, and all of a sudden, I was a better trumpet player. Once again, what I needed personally was opposite of what the theory says was supposed to be right. I didn't have any, it didn't affect my range, and I didn't have any endurance problems. It actually made my endurance better. So this stuff, these rules that people spout about equipment are generalizations that don't necessarily apply to everybody. Okay, I hope that answers your question. So, with the mouthpiece thing, out of those three mouthpieces, I think what you might want to try, if you can get your hands on one, is a Bach 1C or maybe even a Bach 1, just to see if it's harder or worse than or easier than playing on the three that you've got. If you're struggling with those mouthpieces, it's possible that they're just too small because, compared to what I play on, my mouthpiece, the size that I told you that well, let me tell you that part of my story as well. I knew back in the 80s that the Bach 1, that the biggest Bach size that Bach made at that time was too small for me. Just slightly too small. I knew this because of research that I did. The size that I use in Warburton is the 2. That's for the the rim diameter. I use a 2, so like What I played on today was a 2MC. I had a 2MC. I played on 2MC for most gigs from 1990 until for about 10 years. So this is not a new mouthpiece to me. I got away from Warburton because I was having a hissing sound inside the mouthpiece. If I had known what I know now, I would have known that that was from the backbore, not from the cup. With the experimenting I've done so far, the hissing sound comes from the backbore. Anyway, so the reason I'm saying that is because for me, all three of the mouthpieces you have are way too small. 3C, 7C, 10.5C, those are way too small for me. That's not true for everybody. And you know, some people say it depends on how big your lips are. That's not necessarily how it works. It's not how big your lips are. There's a whole bunch of things that go into what makes a mouthpiece comfortable. And by the way, the number in the mouthpiece size, in my opinion, is all about our comfort. It has to feel good on the face. The mouthpiece has to feel good on the face, or we will think about what that's like. If you're a marathon runner and your shoes are not comfortable, you're going to be a miserable marathon runner. And it's the same thing with the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece needs to be comfortable on the lips. And where our comfort comes is from the number of the mouthpiece, the diameter. And by the way, and just in case this is a little confusing, the numbers are not consistent from one maker to the next. I told you that Bach 1 is not big enough for me, but then I tell you I use a 2 on Warburton. When I did my initial research, Warburton 2 was bigger than a Bach 1. Now, today, I think Bach makes some mouthpieces in those bigger sizes. Okay? Anyway, I hope that all makes sense. Just Ford, hello, nice to see you. Just says, when I perform a long solo without resting, my lips don't vibrate on the low notes at the end of the song. What are your thoughts on that? That is a form of fatigue. It's swelling. And technically, it's not really fatigue, but you wouldn't get swollen if you weren't fatigued. Does that make sense? So it's an indirect result, indirect ramification, consequence of fatigue. So when you get to the end of the solo, you start. Now, what happens is you become tired, and when you become tired, you start forcing it. You start pushing harder. When you start pushing harder, it's sort of like getting popped in the face, and you start having your body starts repairing that damage. And that this okay, so by the way, when I talk about this stuff, this is anecdotal. I don't really know for sure if all this stuff is true. This is what I've been taught. This is the trumpet lingo, trumpet legend. This is what's handed down teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher. I'm sharing with you what has been taught to me. We get tired, we start Armstronging it too much. The body responds to that by starting to repair the damage. The repairing causes a swelling in the lips. Swollen lips do not vibrate as well. And where that's more vulnerable is when you're playing softly and when you're playing low, and heaven forbid you should have to play soft and low on swollen chops. Okay, So, and it doesn't have to be so swollen that you can feel a lump. Just a little bit of swelling can cause that to happen. So, what do you do about it? I think my approach to that is different from a lot of other teachers. I've heard people say that thou shalt not ever practice tired. Never, never, never. Once you reach that point of fatigue, stop. Because they have this idea that if you play tired, you're always going to sound tired. But the problem is, there's two problems with that. The first problem is if you never get tired, you don't build strength. Strength comes from fatigue. You have to load the muscles before they grow in strength. If you don't load the muscles, they don't grow in strength. So if you always stop at the point of fatigue, you never grow that strength. So uh, with that philosophy, that solo will always be tough at the end. The only way you could fix that without growing strength is to be more efficient. And what people think efficient means nowadays is not pedagogically sound. Okay? So the other thing that's wrong is that if you never play fatigued, if you never practice beyond the point of fatigue, you never learn coping skills for doing that on the gig. If you don't practice fatigued, and the thing is, when you're practicing fatigue, you have to say to yourself, yes, I'm tired, but I have to do the best job that I can do. You have to continue, even though you've got swollen chops, even though the horn is shaking in your hands. You strive for the best sound, the best execution, the best flexibility, the best mental facilities that you can have. You strive for your best work, your best musical work, even though you are fatigued. If you don't practice beyond fatigue, you never learn how to do that. Pause for effect. Okay? So now, one of the things that you can do to maximize your ability to play when you're tired is pedal tones. And well, I said one of the things. Two things that you can do is pedal tones and lip bends. Those two exercises teach you aperture control. With better aperture control, you can manage swollen chops better. And I'm going to repeat that. With better aperture control, you can cope with the swollen chops better. So when you do, uh, so like in my book, we have the long tones except for the lowest levels. So the first two levels don't have lip bends, but starting from the trumpet player level up, the long tones all have lip bends in them. Another exception is the daily routines. The very first book does not have lip bends. I strongly recommend, if you're doing the daily routines book, that you add lip bends to the long tones. If you do lip bends on a regular daily basis, and when I say daily, every day that you practice, I don't believe in practicing every day. But if you do lip bends every day that you practice, you will have more aperture control. And when you have more aperture control, you can cope better with the um, swelling in your chops. We talked about swelling a little bit 2 Q&As ago. Someone asked me, I apologize for not remembering who it was, but someone asked me, how do you cope on a gig with, I forgot how he worded it, but mashed up chops or something like that. I forget the wording he used, and we spoke at length about that. So you might want to go to the Q&A. That's 2 Q&As back. I think, what is this? This is 27, so that would be 25. I think we're on 27. Let me double check here. Yeah, we're on 127. So go to 125, and um, you know, a lot of the stuff that I talked about for playing on mashed chops will help you with the swelling. Um, Now I kind of lost my train of thought here. I was in the middle of something and then I interrupted myself. That's like my biggest flaw right now as a speaker, is I keep interrupting myself. It's like I'm like got two personalities and they keep interrupting each other. If I missed something, Jess, in your in answering your question, please let me know. Uh, but for now, we're gonna move on. Hello, Jeffrey. Nice to see you. James is here. Hello, James. I would like to smooth out my transitions on lip slurs. Often there is slight hesitation before a note sounds or finds center. The hesitation is preventing me from building speed. Suggestions. First of all, I think that speed comes with familiarity, and familiarity is increased with doing things more slowly. So, um, and let's back up first before I answer that question. We do. I have there's. I don't want to call it a rule, but it's hard to come up with names for these things. I have a thing that I say, so let's call it a rule. Um, but it's not really a rule. It's just a tidbit of trumpet wisdom. All physical work should be done for musical reasons. All physical work should be done for musical reasons. And when we talk about physical work, we're talking about just about everything in the routine, including the lip slurs. So we don't listen to the lip slurs and say, oh, this is awful, I need to make it better. That's when we do that. Let me tell you what's wrong with that. Because it's not musical in nature, because it's mechanical and physical, it's like it's like getting lost in the forest and you don't have a compass. They put this in the videos in movies all the time, right? Um, People who get lost and they actually circle around back to where they were. And I've done enough. We don't have. I I won't go into the forests here in Houston because there's so many mosquitoes. But I've been in forests all over the country, hiking and stuff like that, and it's a true phenomenon. If you don't have a compass and if you don't know how to navigate in the wilderness, you will circle back and end up where you started. It's a true phenomenon. This is one of the reasons why people get lost. And using that as an analogy for what we're talking about with lip slurs, I do not believe in perfecting lip slurs. I do not believe in perfecting long tones. I know this sounds like sacrilege, right? Because you've heard so many trumpet teachers say, how important it is to play those exercises perfectly. I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that. Because when we focus that way on the lip slurs, it takes us in the wrong direction on our journey. We want to do that. We want that perfection. I don't like perfection. I would rather have the word excellence. We want that excellence in our music work, which is part of the reason why we have this 50% rule, where the routine, the long tones, lip slurs, the scales, all of that stuff should only be less than half of your practice time for the day. This is part of the reason for that. This is actually a very, very big reason for that. When we put all of our excellence into the lip slurs and the long tones and all that stuff, it takes us anywhere. It's like a rocket that has no fins on it. Whatever they call those things at the end. Whereas if we apply excellence, the striving for excellence in the musical context, that is always pointing us in the correct direction. Always, always, always. Musical excellence will always take us where we want to go. Physical excellence does not. Physical excellence can take you in some really bizarre places. So my first answer to your question is, let's not think that way. Now we will get, because what you can do is find a piece of music to work on that has that. Right? I'm not suggesting, oh, don't try to be better. Yes, we want to try to be better, but let's put that emphasis where it belongs. And I seem to remember an etude in the Brant book. I don't remember what skill level you're at. Let me grab this book real quick. There's an etude in the Brant book that has a slur that's an octave and a half, an octave and a fifth. Now, this is not my original Brant book. It's got more etudes than the other etudes I used to work on. I'm trying to find the number here. Oh, I thought I could just go to it. My original etude book that I had in high school is no longer with us. I have a scrap, a box of scrap books that I would like to someday use for art projects, like arts and crafts stuff. Why am I not finding it? This is embarrassing. I don't do much with the Brant book anymore, for reasons I won't go into. Yeah, I don't see it now. Anyway, you can find etudes. Oh, maybe this is it. Nope. Okay, I apologize for wasting time. Okay, well, you can find an etude that has these wide intervals in it, and you can apply what you want to do with that. Let me say one more thing about the exercises. This is a great analogy. If you are an athlete, and you, as part of your sport, you are doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. How 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 particular are you about how perfect your sit-ups are? And yes, within reason, we want the sit-ups to be have the right form and have the right, because you see these people who do curls and they curl like this, and I mean, what are you gonna do with that, right? So yes, we want to have full curls and stuff like that, but as it as the curls affect your sport, does it really matter how exact the curls are? Does it really matter how, your exact form? Up to a certain point, it's wasted effort. What matters with these exercises is that you do them. And yes, they should be, uh, there is a threshold that they have to be good enough. But anything past that threshold, I don't think we're worried about that. Now, um, now to answer the other side of the question, what if you do have a big slur um in a etude or something? Let me grab that mouthpiece. So let's say you have a big slur and it's got too much of a portamento in it. I'm going to improvise this, but that slur that I told you about in the Brandt book is the same two notes. So that was a pretty clean slur from the low C to a high G. I'll tell you what, when I was in college, I couldn't do that. Now, what if you're playing it like, and you rip up to that top note? I think it's better to do that rip than it is to do something else to make it a cleaner. Because what happens a lot of time is someone will engage their glottis. Actually, that's not spoken correctly. It's the laryngeal valve, right? Laryngeal valve. The glottis is actually the hole that the laryngeal valve makes when it opens, but we in the trumpet community call that the glottis, even though it's the proper name is the laryngeal valve. Okay, but sometimes people, in order to make that slur come out cleaner, they will engage the laryngeal valves, engage their glottis, close the glottis off, and do what amounts to a throat articulation. The right? They'll basically tongue, but from back here. We don't want that. If you clean this up by doing something other than just moving your lips quickly to that new position, you are doing something that is detracting away from the musical benefits, not helping the musical benefits. So to that end, let me grab. I'm not going to do that with this mouthpiece because I don't want to put marks on my mouthpiece. Let me grab this device. I like to use this for that. Okay, this is a buzz aid. It goes on the mouthpiece. And I like this brand because, not just because a friend of mine makes it, but because it's so easy to switch back and forth. Right? So we can switch it. And then back and forth like that. And then back again. This, I think, is ideal for training your lips to go to that position. So the reason why we go slowly is because we're not so sure where that spot is. And when I say we're not so sure, I mean mentally, I mean psychologically, subconsciously. We're not so sure where that note is, so we don't just go from this position immediately to that position. Now think about it this way. We're going from here to here. Lips are here, now we're going to here. And so getting that clean slur, we want to go straight from this position to that position without any guesswork. And doing this back and forth, for this to work, it really has to be back and forth. Play it on the horn, play it on the mouthpiece, play it on the horn, play it on the mouthpiece, back and forth. When you do that, you train your subconscious to know precisely where that position is. And you just go back and forth like that. This is how you fix that. Okay? Anyway, that's my recommendation for that. Well, we've got good questions today. So yes, James says, I am still playing out of the Chops Pro book. Very nice. So that means that etude that I'm talking about in the Brandt book, that slur that has, and I don't know what number it is. I can't just see it off the top of my head here. The ones at the end of this book are not the same. Maybe this is an entirely different book. Could be a different book. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. Hello, Anthony. Nice to see you. We answered your question. Oh, it wasn't a question. We read your comment. I'm glad, Anthony, that these play along videos that you're spending time on the play along videos. I would really like to make a whole bunch more of those. It just takes so much time and effort. All right, so any other questions? Any other questions? All right. So I guess while we're waiting, oh, here's one. I posted a question on the website, but I think there is a delay. I will check next week. Okay, no, we have time now. Let me look. Oh, do you know what? I don't think it went through. Let me refresh. No, it hasn't gone through. For some reason, it hasn't gone through. Let me double check here. No, I don't see, because it informs me when when a message comes in. Let me double triple check. No, nothing has come in. So if you want, you can ask now. Karen, yes, so Karen says, what was that mouthpiece thing called? And Jeffrey Boyle says Buzz Aid. And that's that's true. That's the category of device. This one specifically is the brass buzzer, and it's made here in Houston by a friend of mine. Let me grab a business card that you can get some information off of. We actually had an interview with him, not an interview, but one of these Q and A's. If you look up Q and A brass buzzer, oh, this is my card. Oh, I thought I had his card in here. Okay, never mind. So if you look up brass buzzer and Q and A, you can see the Q and A where he was a guest to the Q and A. His name's Carl Bueller. He's a friend of mine. What other questions do you have? I'm still embarrassed about starting half an hour late. Any other questions? Lots of stuff going on my side of the world. Um, too much stuff, by the way. I'm like my head swimming. Too many things to do and not enough time to do it. And the more I get into this situation where I have this crunch hitting, the more ideas I come up with that makes the crunch even harder. So I have all these ideas, and then the crunch comes, and it's like trying to get the ideas done. And then as I'm in this crunch, I'm like, oh, this could be better that way, and this could be better that way, and all that. Um, and it's really difficult right now to navigate all that. So, and then over and above all of that is I'm trying to keep my practicing going because it's very easy to get like sucked up into all of that other stuff and not spend time on my horn. You know, I used to say, and I've backed off on this because I think a lot of people take it offensively, right? I used to say that I have sacrificed my improvement as a trumpet player so that other people can benefit from the materials that I write. So, and it's true. If you look at the compositions and the books and all of this stuff, even teaching some of the lessons, um, every every bit of those things takes time away from my own practice. I would love to practice 24 hours a day, or well, actually not 20. That's an exaggeration. I'm trying to not exaggerate anymore. I would love to practice 4 to 8 hours a day like I used to. But these things are more important. I don't need to be the best player in the world. Where my calling is to help other people be the best player in the world. I've always known that. And if you guys have been following my stuff online, this is a theme that keeps coming up. Um, so yes, I've got so many of these things that I'm working on right now. Books, compositions. I'm trying to get my videos back going again. I don't know if you've noticed, but the videos have been kind of sparse lately because I've been taking a break from making them, and we're about to get back into it again. Uh, God willing, this week, Wednesday, we will have a the next video in the sight reading series. Hello, Kirsty. Kirsty says, hello, I am struggling with playing higher notes when going from lower notes. Not in scales, that seems to be okay. Trumpeting for almost a year. Do you have any tips or exercises that would be helpful? So, now, my approach with my beginners, and I consider anyone within the first 2 or 3 years to be a beginner, so I hope that's not offensive. My approach with beginners is that we do an expansion approach for all of that stuff, and you first expand with scales. So you can go down, and you do that 10 times, then do that 10 times, do that 10 times, now add the higher notes. Now, I actually have this in a book. This is the range expand, no, the major scale expansion studies. So, but that would be something that would help you get. But you say it's not scales, but when you get to the higher notes, you dip into the lower notes first and then go up. That's what we're shooting for. After you can do that, we do almost the same thing, but with intervals. Now, what you want to do is look at the top note, the bottom note. How many notes are there? So let's say hypothetically your top note is C in the staff. So C, A, let's count it. C, A, oh, what am I saying? C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G. So that's 11 notes. So roughly 5. So we want to go C down 5. C, B, A, G, F. So F is the middle between C and that doesn't make sense, does it? Let's make it E. That makes, yeah, okay, E is closer. E, C to E and E to G both are 6th. Okay? So that's just to figure out what your starting note is. And this is going to be different. The reason I'm telling you this way because I don't know what your top note is. Okay? So we want to go do that 10 times. Now down a third. And probably should slur it. Do that 10 times. Now up a fourth. Do that 10 times. And another variation of this is to do multiple. So you could go. Okay. Then you do that 10 times. Then you go up a fifth. Then you go down. Then you go up to the highest note. Do that exercise 10 times, then go down. Now you do it from the low notes up. So you're going to go up, then up to C, then up to D, and you keep going up to that until you have G up to C. Oh, let me do that again. So you want to do that, and what that does is connect your bottom notes to your top notes. We want to do the same thing going from the top down. And then the next one, do that 10 times. And keep doing that going down until you get to the bottom one. Okay? So that's what I recommend for what you're talking about. It's basically, now the 10 times thing is important. Don't just, if, you know, when people ask me questions like this and I give an example like that, most people won't do the 10 times. And you're welcome. Christy says thank you. Kirsty. A lot of people won't do the 10 times. So let's talk about the 10 times thing quickly. This is I used to hesitate to do this with the beginners because we don't want the beginners to quit. Not needlessly, right? I'm not suggesting that everybody who starts trumpet should always play trumpet. But I used to think that if I bombard them with the 10 times thing, that they'll quit needlessly. Okay? Like, you know what I mean? Like they'll give up before they've given it a try. And so on the one hand, I don't want people to, I don't believe everybody who has an interest in it should always do it. But on the other hand, the time that you're most vulnerable to problems on the trumpet is when you're first starting. If you can do something that you know you're doing correctly 10 times and that 10 times should be calm, relaxed, and focused, deliberate. If you can do that 10 times comfortably, you are doing more to train your mind than you can possibly imagine with 100 different exercises. You're basically rewiring, reprogramming your mind when you do that. So yes, it's so extremely important. Now the beginners, I think what's happened is my reputation as a teacher has gotten so, I've got such a strong reputation now as a teacher that I can afford to tell them stuff like this without worrying about them quitting. And when I say don't worry about them quitting, if someone isn't right for trumpet, they don't need to be playing. It's not about me losing money. You guys already know I'm not like that. But when someone quits before they ever started, that's bothersome. So that's what I mean about the 10 times thing. A lot of people get bored with it. Kirsty says, I'm having too much fun to quit. Very good. Very good. So this 10 times thing is very important. If you apply so some people would call this a spider exercise. Oh, here's another another variation of the spider exercise. This is another one that you might want to do. Starting on the same note, but going outward. And then go the other way. Now go up and down. So up from F is G, down from D is C. And we just expand that till we go G to C, G to C. And that's a variation of what they call the spider exercise. Okay. Hello, Sean. Sean is one of my students. Sean asks, what is mainstream jazz, and do you consider yourself a mainstream jazz trumpet player? Mainstream jazz is basically, the way I look at that is the songs that are being played at the jam sessions. So it's not so much a genre. It's not a genre. It's a mainstream jazz is more talking more about which tunes are you playing. So like if you play All of Me, if you play There Will Never Be Another You, there's a set of tunes, about 300 of them, maybe 1,000 of them, depending on who you talk to, that are considered mainstream, that all the jazz players know this. So it's not really a style. So yeah, so mainstream, I wouldn't call it a style. But the thing is, when we talk about mainstream, we're not talking about anything fancy. So it's hard to explain. Mainstream is not a genre. It's not a sub style. I might have said something like that in the past, but it really doesn't work like that. Basically, mainstream is a list of songs to learn. Sean also asks, he says, regarding the 10 times rule, I watched a documentary on John Faddis who said he would spend a month on one measure of dizzy transcription. It says transposition, but I think he meant transcription. Yep. So this repetition stuff is a big deal. Yep, a big deal. Any other questions? Okay, I think we will wrap it up. My wife gets off in 15 minutes anyway, so I'll have to go pick her up. So, I'm not so sure what the best time is for these things. I have to schedule these Q and A's during time when I have time to do it, but I'd like to make it to where people can actually be here. I'm also doing some other stuff with the Q and A's where I go back and I guess the word would be edit. I'm not editing the actual video, but I'm editing how it's presented. Sean says, "Thanks, sir. I appreciate what you do." You're welcome, Sean. So yes, if you go back to some of the older, how am I saying this? So I don't mean order. So the what I'm doing is after the Q and A is done, I go through and I add the links up in they call them cards. I add end screen. I add um so like if you look at number 25 and 26, I now have the subjects where you can click on you read in the description what we were talking about, and you can click on the link. It'll take you straight to that question. So I think that's going to help encourage more people to go back and watch the older videos. And I'm also putting links if it's something that I think would benefit on the website. I'll put links on the website. So this is a lot of when the Q&A is done, there's a lot of work I have to do afterwards now, but I think it makes it better because people can get more out of it after the Q&A is finished. What I might have to do is scale back on how many of these I do, just because it's taking me twice as much time now. I have to actually listen through the whole video, which is dreadful for me. I hate listening to myself. But I actually listened to the whole video looking for cards that I can add and timestamps to add in the description. So anyway, that's it for today. God bless you guys. And we will see you on the next one. All right. Thank you for hanging out.